Welcome to the Tech League podcast. Hello and welcome to the Tech League podcast. I'm Toby Sis, your host, and I'm joined by my usual co-host, Krisztian Fischer.
Hello.
Hello, cool. Today we're going into the topic of principal engineers. Something that I've wanted to learn a bit more about, so I'm going to grill Krisztian a little bit, seeing as he is one himself. But before we get into that, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping. So we have a new email address, techleaguepodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send us questions or abuse or whatever. We'll read those. And if anything's like super good, we will probably read them out on the podcast at some point. It'd be nice to do some sort of like mailbag episode. At time of recording, we've released the first 2 episodes on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And we'll see about getting them on other things, but that's quite exciting. And the plan is to have a weekly release schedule from now on. So every Thursday or Friday. We'll try and release the next one. Get it? Okay, on to today's topic. So we're going to be talking principal engineer, what it is, how you do it. You have a lot of experience in this, Krisztian, as you are a principal engineer yourself. I don't know very much about them. Maybe it's because I haven't worked in a company big enough. Well, I have, but they're not something I've seen very much. Let's just start by, you can give us a little bit of context of where a principal engineer is within the technical organization. Take it away.
Okay. Maybe it's worth starting with the typical levels of engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you have juniors, then you have regular software engineer, then senior software engineer, staff, and then principal. And there can be, depending on the company, everybody does it slightly differently, calls it slightly differently. But these are the typical ones, and there could be in-betweens like senior staff or distinguished principal or mid-level, could be also multiple ones. So, but certainly being a principal engineer means that you're at the higher end of the level for sure, which typically entails that you have many years of experience. You have seen a lot of different areas, but we can dive into that, what it means.
I mean, would you expect to see them at a certain size of company? Because when I hear principal engineer, it feels like it's the highest point you get and still do any kind of engineering before it gets to like purely management. I'm sure it's mostly management and principal engineering as well. But like for the smaller companies, I haven't really seen them. But in like mid and larger companies, that's where they start appearing, right?
Yeah, certainly you do need probably a certain size for it to make sense, really. In a startup, yeah, you can still be principal engineer, but it doesn't mean much. It's like you can be a CTO in a 4-person startup as well.
Yeah.
But usually this is below the CTO level in the organization, or at least in my experience, it's a role that entails a lot of communication with the CTO or generally the C level.
Well, let's do a bit of a deep dive then, because that segues quite nicely into what does a principal engineer actually do. So from your experience as a principal engineer, what's your like daily work look like?
Very difficult to describe in like exact terms because it's kind of the role is that you have to do what needs to be done. But generally I could describe it as more of a strategic level thinking on the engineering side. But I want to just jump back quickly on what you said. It's still an individual contributor role. So it's not management in the classical sense where you have responsible people to manage. I'm going to get into it. You do influence or mentor people, but you do not manage them typically. So I would say this is one of the highest levels in the individual contributor path. Healthy companies have this separated from the management role. So you can be an individual contributor without having to become a manager. But manager level is I would say as an engineer, if you want to switch tracks into management, probably the staff-ish level is where it's most likely that where you would do that if you realize that's what I want to do. Maybe a bit earlier if you really have talented or that's really that's your drive, that's what you want to do. You could switch to a management position but then still these are parallel tracks, I would say, management and engineering.
So you start off as an engineer, and if you want to keep engineering, you keep going up and then you hit principal engineer eventually.
Probably.
And then
Probably.
if you want to go management, you split off around the staff level or for staff or above.
That's my general experience. Yeah, if people realize, because usually when you're a staff engineer, you realize like you want to do this on the technical side, or you want to more work with people because you have enough experience to actually know that. Before it's a bit of a gamble, I would say.
I mean, in my case, it was because it was needed, not because what I wanted to do. Being social, we talked about this before, but being social, people will try and force you into a management role.
It's very common. That used to be the case, almost certainly in every company, that the more senior engineer you became, like the more management roles you got, like more likely that you got a management role, which removed you from what you love doing. So we try to compensate for this in the industry by keeping the individual contributor, consciously making it possible for engineers to stay an engineer, because everybody burns out if they want to be an engineer and then they have to do management, and then nobody wins. It's a lose-lose situation for everyone. So I think that's why it's important to have equivalent roles both in the engineering side and management side to grow together. And that also enables you to have very strong partners on the management side, on the product development side, that you can work with. So you don't have to wear all the hats, and everybody knows what their responsibilities, and it's way more effective than trying to be the manager and the lead engineer and the product owner. It doesn't work. Specialization is required at some point in bigger organizations. In a startup, you're all of the above, most likely. The CTO is the product, and so that's very, very common. But if you specialize at bigger companies, then you end up with parallel tracks in engineering and management. And
so product. It sounds like the go-to senior engineer for upper management.
Yes,
I'm just guessing from what you've said here. So like, feel free to point out if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So as a principal engineer, it's why I can't answer the day-to-day job is it's so varying depending on the seasons. I would say it depends also on what the company wants to do, but very like if we start from top to and we go down, the principal engineer's role is to translate the product requirements into high-level technical directions, or product strategy, I should say, not the requirements. So if the company decides to enter a market, then we have to look at it as a big picture and determine, like, okay, do we need to change the overall architecture of the company? Do we have to introduce new technologies? Do we have the right skill set in the teams and these type of things? And then based on those discussions with the product leaders, for instance, then the principal engineer would create a general strategy on how to achieve those goals that they set out. But as a principal engineer, I wouldn't go and say, okay, then we have to have a service here or whatever here. It's very high level in the beginning.
I was going to ask what the difference between a principal engineer and an architect was, because they sounded very similar for a bit then.
Not much. I think the mentality. The mentality is a different. So architecture became sort of like a curse word or a negative word because historically, and I've been working that way as well, especially in like bigger organizations like banks or whatever, like there's a group of architects who decide how it's going to be. And then it was set in stone and then handed down, do this, right? To the engineering organization.
You have the tech radar and everyone has to follow the rules.
Yeah, I mean, rules
which
we
is
still
good.
have to have, but it's a consensus-based rules, but we discussed that earlier. But it's the ways of working, I would say, is different. Like, and this is my personal view. So I'm not saying like all principal engineers are the same, but in my experience, what a good principal engineer would do is to set the directions, communicate those, work it through with the typically the staff or senior staff people in the organization. These are the goals, these are the reasons, the business reasons behind what we want to do, and then work it out in detail with those people. So it's not I design everything and then hand it down. I have been doing those projects as well, like let's say in the early 2000s, where I wrote like 200-page documents with detailed diagrams, class diagrams, sequence flow, like everything you can imagine. And then there were implementation teams who picked it up and then implemented it. Now, did I get everything right? What is your guess? Obviously not. right? So it always has to be a back and forth, and always has to be a communication anyhow. This authoritative like hand-me-downs it just doesn't work. That's why I would say, like an architect, you imagine in civil engineering, an architect just designs the whole house, and then this is the drawing, and then please build it. In software engineering, I think it's a bit more fluid than that.
We don't have enough standards. We've talked about this before. Like, it's not like we don't have enough standards to be able to do that.
Yes, but also it results in a much better outcome if you get feedback from your staff engineers or other principal engineers. So it has to be a completely like a cooperation between the parties who implement it and who set the direction. It's always like that. I think it's more like leading by example rather than using your authority to enforce what you want.
That's a management style as well. But it does sound like there's a lot to unpack from what you've said already, because it sounds like you're overlapping with product, with architecture, with some like management aspects as well, but maybe not so much. So it's a lot of those things. But where does the individual contribute part come in? Do you go into a team and you implement some like infrastructure or code?
It does happen. As well. I do think a principal engineer has to be able to get hands-on, but only when it's really needed. I don't think it should be common, and I tell you why. So if I would spend most of my time coding, then I would neglect what matters. It's money. Too expensive. Yes,
exactly.
And there are more efficient people who can write
your
code.
Skills are better used making the rest of the org better and faster. It's the same with DevOps, and my line of work is a force multiplying thing, right?
Yeah, I would say it's preventing errors, organizational level errors, like
preempting bad decisions that will cause errors in future.
Yes, choosing bad technologies, building the wrong product, or like using the wrong technology for what the product needs to be. And you mentioned that there's a overlap between product and management. I would say the relation to product is cooperation or peer-to-peer. You would work
project and product.
Yeah, yes, but for product management, I would say I mostly help product understand what the capabilities are and what the costs are. So before we implement anything, we talk through, hey, if we fulfill this requirement, it will probably cost us ballpark this amount, or this technology doesn't exist, so we would have to build it, therefore it will have a longer lead time, and these type of high level decisions. So I help product understand what the limitations are and what the technology is capable of. And that leads me to, like, obviously you have to stay on top of the technology landscape, like at least like understand what's available, so you don't start building things that you could buy, that you understand the limitations, and of course, like the newest technology, like if you see something that you could use for the benefit of the company, it's your responsibility really to get to know it and offer solutions to the C-levels or offer options, because they work at the highest strategic level. They're not going to care if you're running on Kubernetes or ECS, right? But you have to understand what those means and how you could utilize it for the benefit of the company. This pretty much means like you have to be like a chief technical expert in many areas, or at least in certain areas that you need for your job. So it's expected from a principal engineer that they always keep learning, get the new technologies. Also being able to evaluate a technology not just from, oh, this is so cool, can I do what I want to do, but also what are the costs, what are the security implications.
I was going to ask about security. That's going to be another big part.
100%. How do we integrate? You could have the best technology, but if you can't integrate it into your ecosystem, then it's, you have to understand those points as well. You're very often involved in due diligence processes, like if partners want to do a due diligence on you for whatever reason, maybe acquisitions, or just big companies require like an X-ray of the company, pretty much like a due diligence process to understand the tech stack that you're most likely involved, and you most likely have to be part of those discussions. So you have to represent the company at the highest levels, typically, like when you're talking to other partners. So there's a lot of communication in that sense. But is that management? I wouldn't call it management.
That's technical communication, but at the top level.
Yes. Yeah, so you can think of it as a translator between high-level business strategy and technical implementation. So when I'm hearing that, okay, the company's goal is to stay on the same markets, expand the sales, and gain operational efficiency, if you tell this to a low-level engineer, they will like, what are you talking about? Okay, what should I do now? Right? So I have to translate that into, okay, that means that we're not going to invest in new features for new markets. Let's focus on looking at our cost structure. What is our unit economics? Make sure that you're not overspending. Maybe these are not that technical, tangentially technical topics, cost optimization and whatnot, but it can also mean like, hey, like, let's not use a technology that does cross-regional replication of the database because you don't need it. This is what I mean. We have to translate business requirements into some level of technical terms that the engineers can execute on.
It sounds like you need a really, really deep knowledge pool, because I'm hearing lots of different roles here. Like there's like SRE with availability. Do we need a certain amount of SLO and SLA and uptime and cross-regional stuff? And then there's also FinOps, a bunch of other things. So it sounds like you need to be able to like almost at a glance, or maybe, I don't know, maybe we can talk about this in a little bit, like how you first steps you take when you join as a principal engineer, but my guess would be is like full understanding of the system, and then as much as you can, big deep dive on everything, and then so that you have the whole system in your head, you have the context, the model of the whole system in your head, and then you understand how tweaking these knobs will affect the whole thing. It does sound a bit like architecture, but it sounds more like, less like an architect, more like you said, like a technical communicator, translator, collaborator. I don't know, like you've got to grease all the gears in different places. So like you're saying with the product, you got to talk to product, and you talk to product in their way of talking, and then you talk to the project manager and you say, this is how long it's going to take from my experience, and then you talk to the C-level and you say, oh, we need to implement this to make sure that we're compliant with that. It's like all over the place, but you need to have a deep understanding of the system you're working with to be able to give accurate results. And I guess very quickly, people will be able to see if you're not giving accurate answers.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I guess at every level, integrity is key, right? So you can't bullshit. So you have to stay honest about what you know and what you don't know. But if you're at that level, you will explicitly state if you don't know something. That's just how it is. But your characterization is correct. When I join a company, I have to build a mental model of everything. Bird's eye view, of course. If you have 200, 300 services, I'm not going to be able to name all of them, but most of them. But I have to understand each organizational unit, what they define goals are and define vision is, and then how do they match together, and then how do they interact with each other. And typically I am drawing massive architecture diagrams for myself, which always turns out to be very useful for others as well. And then maybe like an area is represented as a box, but couldn't include hundreds of services. But then usually once I have the big picture, then I go deep in every area. And then ask questions. So it's interviewing a lot of people usually. So again, communication is key there. So it's communication all over the place. I would say at this point, it's like 80% of my work is understanding and communicating complex technical issues.
It's also, we talked about this before, like every time you step up a rung on the ladder, your view of the system becomes broader. And this sounds like the broadest it can be. You have the whole thing in your head. Because a staff engineer may be like the chief technical person for a domain, and they understand the whole domain really well. And then a medium engineer might be, medium engineer is the right term, but they might be the chief technical person for a team or two teams that have a bunch of services, right? And then a junior might be the chief technical person for one service. And you see how it expands every time you go up.
Yeah, exactly.
So the principal guys is like everything.
Everything within engineering, I would say. So it doesn't cover, sales or whatever.
No,
so obviously
no.
I'm not that knowledgeable about treasury or, the other areas but within engineering, it's my job to know most of the things and be able to answer high level questions when they rise up.
Or I guess if you don't know the question, if it's too specific, you know who to ask.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, like I don't know everything, so I'm gonna go investigate and then do a high level report. And that's what I find very useful for upper management. I can translate these super complex technical terms into very simple business expressions or business terminology, because that's what most engineers find very hard. It's just like, so, okay,
Yeah.
it's like how many customers can we serve, and then we start talking, oh, we can handle 10,000 requests a second. Okay, but that wasn't a question, like, how many customers can be on board? And you can learn this to be the translator between business and engineering. I would say that's a crucial part of the role. And there are other aspects as well. We've been talking about communicating with external parties and upper management and product and whatnot, but it's equally important to express the expectations towards the engineering organization. So that could be teaching. I don't like the word teaching because but that implies that somebody's standing in front of a big chalkboard and spews knowledge into people's head. But that's not how it is usually. It's usually through working together. At least that's my preferred way of doing it. I think it's way more authentic if you jump in the team and help them understand what needs to be done and why, because that's what you can provide mostly as a principal engineer, because you should have knowledge about higher level design principles, and then you can explain that, like, why are we doing this way? Why don't we reuse the same database for 50 million services? Because down the line, it's going to cause issues and we have to work together. So we're applying this principle, and then you have to explain the principles, because once people internalize these ideas, then going forward, they can just apply them. They don't need to be told all the time. So I think teaching is a key part of it, although I don't like the term. Knowledge sharing is probably better.
Or mentoring. Mentoring's not
Mentoring
so
is also part. Exactly. Yeah, you're right about that. But mentoring is more one-to-one. So teaching or knowledge sharing is one-to-many or one to a group of people. Mentoring is one-to-one. And that's also very important. I often get asked to be the mentor of people. Sometimes I have to decline because
you have
time
too many
limitations.
mentees already.
Yes,
your little tribe of followers.
Yeah, so I prefer to work with the senior staff and staff engineers on this or in a mentorship. I'm really self-conscious about that. I don't like to call it mentoring either. It's just I like to help people to grow in certain areas. If they haven't done big system design, and I can help what to think about, how to collect requirements, and how to think about things, or personal development as well. Like, how do I become why don't I get promoted type of questions. It's like, I can tell you what I see, and then you can work on it. And yeah, it is mentoring. I don't like big words, so I just call it working it. But it is definitely part of, it's expected from a principal engineer. It's, in my opinion, the more principal engineers we have in a company, the better, the easier life becomes.
Well, no, there has to be a ratio, right? There's a saturation point. You can't all be principal engineers because nothing would get done.
Yeah, no, of course. But you have to have multiple. I think that's healthy.
Yeah. But it's the same both ways. It's the same for every level. It's like this whole thing with no juniors is stupid. You can't be a senior without a junior.
Yeah, exactly. And it's worth noting that not everybody should want to become a principal engineer. It's not all hunky-dory.
No, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like you have to have it's like, what's it called? Taken. You have a very specific set of skills.
Yes, I'm going to apply it.
Yeah. But it sounds like, not everyone, I can see it being a goal. One day I want to be a principal engineer, but it shouldn't be just for the title. You have to understand, and hopefully this podcast will help people understand what it's actually like to be a principal engineer. Because it sounds like if you like going into work, and something I'm enjoying a lot at the moment is, instead of having this big view and this management and all the politics and stuff, is actually sitting at an editor and doing real work, what I consider real work, right? Spinning up EKS clusters, configuring stuff with Terraform. If you like doing that stuff, it probably isn't the best career choice, because you'll end up doing less of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe a bit of a bleed over from this like capitalist, you have to make more every year. Maybe you find a point where you're happy and comfortable and just stay there. You don't have to keep going up.
That's very well said. Exactly. If you enjoy the engineering part, the strictly coding, creating new services, being really good at the craft, I would recommend staying at the senior staffish level. Maybe, okay, I have to caveat this. It might depend on my personal experience that I'm saying that, because maybe in massive companies, as a principal engineer, you code the whole day. You just code on your favorite projects. It could be, but in my experience, it's different. So you get way more expectations from management. So you have responsibilities, and you're responsible for way bigger parts of the organization, architecture, reliability, business continuity. If there's an outage, you're going to be in the room for sure. Why is this? Why is this repeating? What did we do to prevent it? And of course, in the end, it's the team's responsibility to fix these issues. But every leader in every area is responsible for everything that's happening below him or her or him. And it's the same with being a principal engineer. And you have to be okay with not having control over everything, but being responsible for it. Because you can explain a million times and you can verify that, okay, it looks good, but in the end, if there's an outage, you will have to explain it to management why we have that. But on the flip side, I had experiences where I joined a company that already had a lot of outages every week or several times a week, massive amounts of money lost. And then just by joining that part of the organization and starting to look into the problem, you can find solutions. You've seen it a million times. It's easier for you to solve it, and then you solve it, and then the availability goes up, so you can be credited with it.
But that's again, the higher you go up, the more impact you can have on the whole company, and that's why there's also responsibility involved in that.
Yes.
But you get less chance to be in your own bubble and do your own thing. That's what it sounds like.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And there's also an expectation, at least what I do is, if I join a company, I always go to the nastiest problems. That's the first thing I do. Of course, I get the big overview, what is happening, what do we have, how does it work? But almost always I will end up in the nastiest, biggest problem that the company has, because that's why they hired me.
You have to eat the frog.
Yeah, you have to go deep on that sense. And I do enjoy that, really. Crisis management, figuring out what the technical problem is, laying out a long-term plan to get out of it, but also short-term to mitigate the issues. And generally, I genuinely enjoy that. So I do get in contact with the systems, of course. It could be that the data center is in shambles and you have to fix it. Or it could be that the billing system is not finishing on time before we have to celebrate. It could be whatever, right? And these are just random examples. It's expected that you go deep as well. So very nuanced technical problems to solve these nuanced technical problems as well, but also don't keep focus of the big picture and also long-term strategy. So it's not just the surface area that you have is growing as you go higher in the engineering ladder, but it's also the time horizon that you have to look in front of you to understand what needs to be done. And then, of course, a lot of things derive from that. If you set a long-term plan, then you have to start working towards that. And then you have to keep the whole organization on the same path and not let them diverge too much. So you have to be informed about every area and make sure that everything is generally going in the same direction. It's never perfect. We always have to make compromises, but it's your responsibility to make sure that if there's something popping up that's not aligned with the stated goals, and of course you have to state the goals, of course, it's not just in your head, but then intervene if something is going against the plans.
But it sounds like this is where the collaboration with the other people in upper management and product and project management, all this kind of stuff, and security and everything, you really need to talk to everyone, because you need to get all of the information sources all the time.
Yeah, you have to be in contact with many different areas in the company, and you have to play nice, because if you you can't have enemies in that sense, right?
That's why I couldn't be a principal engineer. I had to make enemies too easily.
No, it's as long as you understand that your disagreements are not against the person. It's just you disagree. And we can say, hey, I disagree with this topic. I understand where you're coming from, but I disagree. I can still have a coffee with you, and we can still go out for lunch. But we can completely disagree on the strategy or how we should do things.
I once got called a toddler who was throwing his toys out the pram because I wanted the engineers to have complete read access to their AWS accounts, and they're like, no, there's a security vulnerability. There's just read access, and they can't see what they're doing. And then he called me a toddler throwing toys out of the pram.
You have to play nice with us, but I don't think your example is very extreme. We do have, like, typically we do have view access on your own accounts, but usually the compromises that we have to make are because of time pressure, or we know what we should have, but we don't have the resources to do it.
Yep. But there's resource planning. You have to start prioritizing tasks around what would make the most difference. Then you're into project management.
Yes, it definitely has an aspect. So bigger companies do have project managers, but obviously they are not technical people. So you have to provide information for the decision that the project manager, because you could say, like, we could implement it the hacky way now in 1 week, but later in 2 years, we're going to have to pay 10 times the price, because that's usually the ratio. Or we can spend 3 weeks and it's actually aligned with the strategy that we want to have. Do we have 3 weeks? Is it okay? Can we push it? Can we talk to the customer? So it's always like this. Like, we always have to make compromises, and we have to discuss the options, and you can't get emotional about it. You can express your ideas, especially as an engineer. I candidly explain what my view is, but the decision is typically not mine. Because I don't handle I don't have ownership of the resources, right? Money, time, people. So that's why communication, again, is key. You have to be able to express the ideas and the consequences of picking a choice very clearly, and it shouldn't be based on your emotions or feeling, or or hunches.
It's data-driven decision making.
It should be data-driven, but very often you don't have the data. So that's when your experience weighs in, and you say, like, hey, look, I have seen this before. I have made this mistake. This was the cost. Or I would generally just simply not advise doing this. Sometimes, we do choose the option that I do not advise. And usually I'm right in the end, but it doesn't matter because the company could maybe sell more at that point in time. But on the technical front, we know we're going to pay the price. It is what it is. So you have to be a good team player, but also you have to be able to push back on things that you really think matters.
That sounds like politics. I don't do way too much of that.
Well, it changes the technical posture of the company, or the capabilities, or maintainability, or cost, or these type of things. So you can reason about those. I don't think when you say politics, I always have a negative connotation with that word. That would mean like power and keeping your position and those. I don't do those games.
My experience of senior management has been, you want stuff done. People won't listen to you, even if you, like, it sounds to me like you do a very data-driven, fact-based approach. But then I've tried that before in the past, and I've run into people who are entrenched in their ways of working, or they have almost emotional attachment to their systems. And then you have to start playing politics. You have to kowtow to their egos and stuff.
Yeah, that's why you need to have or peers both in management and product. Because product can influence the long-term strategy of the company, and management can fix the personal issues.
Yeah, well, I was stuck doing the personal issues, which I don't like doing. But.
Yeah, so if as a principal engineer, I'm not handling those,
that sounds
but I have
wonderful.
to highlight.
Yeah,
but I do highlight the issues, because if I see an issue, I will highlight it to management, and they might choose to do something about it. Usually I do have the ears of the senior managers, because they know they can rely on me. I'm not bullshitting. I'm not, playing power politics, because I don't care. I don't care about titles. I don't care about, individual systems. Oh, I built it, so it has to be kept up. Like, I don't know. Kill it if you want. Like, even if I wrote it yesterday, if it not fulfills the purpose, kill it. So I don't play these type of political games. And I think my colleagues appreciate that, because they know I'm going to say it how I see it, and we can take it from there. I'm not going to make a decision, or I'm not going to influence the decision just because it suits me better.
That's good. That's integrity. That is high integrity. That is.
And if it makes me redundant, it's even better.
That's what I try and do all the time. Try and make myself redundant because I don't want to work.
That's the right attitude.
Yeah, I think so. Let's okay. We're touching on it a little bit now, but what would you say is, how would I frame this? You've joined a new company, and you're in a group of principal engineers. What would you say is a red flag in another principal engineer? Something they shouldn't be doing?
Arrogance typically is the first warning sign. If it's very easy at a high position to argue from authority. We do it this way because I told you so, right? So if I see that, it's immediate red flag.
Yeah.
Because no single person can always make the right decision. And obviously we're opinionated people, right? So we have our own view on life and how we should do things and architectures and technologies. But I have to be able to reason along different dimensions like availability or cost or ease of implementation or ease of maintenance, something, because I'm the principal engineer and I decided this way is not a good argument.
And that sounds a lot like how people think of architects. Like, I've decided exactly. This is the way, so this is the way.
Yeah, exactly. So we consciously try to avoid having an architect group acting as an ivory tower, and then we just make decisions and everybody, should just follow our decisions. That's not the way, at least in 2025, this doesn't work anymore. And this is culture dependent. So I'm more talking about European, Nordic areas, I would say. Yes. Where we're consensus based. But honestly, like if I can't reason, if I can't argue or argue for my decision, then it's not a good decision. It's not a decision, it's just a hunch or something, right? And very often when we talk through the problem and there are counter arguments for certain coming from completely different areas. But if we do that, then let's say the product will be perceived as less desirable. Completely valid argument, and maybe I haven't thought about that. Yep. So it helps me, keeping my integrity, because you will make mistakes, and then if you make mistakes, then if you already established an environment where you can discuss the problems and come to a conclusion, then it's easier to roll back from the wrong decision.
At some point, we should do a discussion on how to do a good root cause, because blameless root causes are the key to making good stuff, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. The feedback cycles are super important.
Culture of blameless culture is super important. And I see, we will get into that another time, but it sounds like that needs. So arrogance is very toxic to blameless cultures, but it sounds like it's also toxic to being a principal engineer. What else?
Well, it's very similar to what we just discussed. I have noticed that because of the position, especially in the beginning, before I start explaining how I work, come to me like, I want to do it this way. Do you approve of this? And it's like, I can provide my opinion. It's a supportive role. It's not an authority. So you come with your problem to me and I will express my professional view on it, but you make the decision. You take it in, you think about it, and then it's your choice. So I don't like to become the, the rubber stamp, boom, boom, just come to me for approval on anything, because that creates a bottleneck in the organization, and we don't want that.
It will limit people's accountability and confidence.
Yes, and it's not scalable either. Because then I have to be involved in every micro decision that they want to make, and it removes the fun for them as well. Like, they should be able to make a decision and execute on those decisions and reap the benefits. And if we don't do that, if I have to approve everything, then I'm doing something wrong. And if they consistently, like, let's say I express my opinion and they consistently make a choice that is not good for the company long term, then I made a mistake not sharing my knowledge better earlier. So that's why we have these like few key roles or like key responsibilities for a principal engineer, and one is knowledge sharing. If my goal is not to, I know so much, right, and I've studied so much and I learned so much and I read so much, but I'm not going to share that with you, so you have to come to me so I can make a judgment call. That's just ridiculous.
And that's power gathering. That's horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And I have seen people who do this because of the, it's job insecurity or something like that. And if I'm the only one who can answer these questions, then I'm not going to get fired. I'm the opposite.
You fire them instantly and you work it out. That's what you do.
I'm more like, everybody should know what I know. It would be much better to work together. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to share my experiences. It's not always, highest knowledge or whatever, but just experiences. Hey, I've done this before. This was the outcome. This is what I could have done better. And they can learn. So they should learn from my mistakes that I've done over the 30 years and benefit. And they should bypass me on the career ladder or whatever. I don't mind.
That's lack of ego, but it's also, it makes me think of, I don't know if you've heard the term servant leadership. I don't know if I've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a book about it. I didn't know what it was. It's how I've always done management, is where I see myself as a resource that helps the team. I work for the team. The team doesn't work for me. And I'm there to protect them and facilitate them however they want. And I learned that from a manager I had in the ski slope when I worked ski, right? He was really good at that. And then when I was at Klarna, my boss at the time, he recommended I read the book, and it was like exactly what I've been doing. And it's really good, really good. It really makes you empower people. And by empowering people, you make them more confident. And over time, you make yourself less needed. And that's what I try and do. I try and make myself, like you said, redundant. And sometimes the company still wants me there because I still offer, because I still offer guidance and to some decision making. I do try all the time to make myself redundant. So it sounds very similar to this. Like the servant, you need to be a servant. Principal engineer isn't a boss. It's more like a support role for the company.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the role is like above, right? Like because in every counting system or like the levels, it's always high, but in reality, it's a supportive role. It could be perceived that it should be the same with governments, right? Like we elect them or we raise them to the top, and that they should serve us, not play king. And that applies to principal engineering as well. I have to say though, like if there are some higher level decisions that have to be made. Usually those are done by the CTO, but they have to be prepared well. And that's when the principal engineer comes in. And there are situations where different parts of the organization can't agree. You might have to have the deciding vote.
The truce breaker or the siege breaker or whatever it's called.
Yeah, and insert your authority a little bit. But if you always do that, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So I try to avoid that as much as possible, rather have one more discussion with the teams and lay out a plan. And then if we can't agree, then we just make an executive decision on the technology or whatever. And it will be how it will be. But I try not to use that power entrusted in me by the management.
It's like a stick. I don't know. Like the more you use the stick, the more people will get used to the stick. But if you rarely use the stick, they'll be scared of the stick.
Yeah. And another thing that I don't like to do as a principal engineer is to take the best parts of the job. When there's a super interesting project that let's say you're leading, and we have to implement something super cool that hasn't been done before and whatever, but others can do it. Like let's say the senior staff could do it. I don't like to take that job, as in like take the task.
Again, this is where the servant part comes in. You're like, you have the good stuff. Always give them the good stuff.
Yeah.
Because they'll appreciate that. And you get a lot of reciprocal good feelings from people by doing that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a good feeling to see something being implemented, something cool. I would very often love to be part of the team who codes it, but I have to refrain from that. And partially because at this level, and this can vary company by company, but at this level, you're usually not long-term part of any team because you have to move so much and know about so many things. At least in my experience, this could be different in other companies. But in my experience, I can't be heavily involved in implementing singular services because I also think that you should be responsible for your code, meaning you should be on call for it. And you should be maintaining it and everything. And I just simply do not have the time or the capacity to do that. So very often I know I could help out the team or I could write that specific piece of code, but I don't do it because then I would be the only one who knows about it.
You'd be the last one to touch it, so then you own it.
And I should be on call for it if I wrote it. And I just sometimes can't afford that, or like most often. That's one of the reasons why my time is not spent coding. One of the reasons only, but it is definitely a conscious decision that I rather find someone who can do it and as part of the team and add more resources, like people to the team, than me tainting the code. And that I also noticed that because of the position, or the title, people tend to question you less.
Yes,
if I create a pull request, like I would expect that I get the same scrutiny, but a junior engineer will not start pestering me probably. So, and that's not good. No,
it's not good.
Yeah. So it's also like it creates a power dynamics that I don't like. So I'd rather advise and help out if needed, but it has to be asked by the team. Like, hey, could you please help with this? And it does happen very often. It's usually critical systems or critical processes, risky migrations, or if the team doesn't have a certain skill set like cloud engineering, then I can help out. But usually I stay away from too low-level tasks because of this weird power dynamics and the responsibility that comes with it.
And then I guess, well, I don't know if this is related, but it's something I'm thinking about is curse of the expert. Because you know so much. Not to blow smoke up your ass, but like, because you know so much, it's hard. I found it very hard and in my teams working on internal developer platforms and stuff, I'm always grilling them or getting into the head. Just because you know this doesn't mean someone else knows it, and you have to word it in a way that goes down to their level of knowledge. Because you make assumptions. It's totally human nature. You think with Kubernetes, like, oh, you just create a service, there's this and an ingress, and then people are like, what the hell is he talking about? Do you get that a lot? Do you have to change your level of communication all the time?
Yeah, depending who I speak with. So, for instance, if I'm talking to a senior engineer and I say I expect this to be exactly one semantics on the queue, I expect them to know what it means, right? But if I talk to a junior engineer, then I will explain what it means first. If I use a term, I explain what it means, and then then we can have the discussion. So it goes back into the knowledge sharing situation. It's not like I'm gonna dumb it down, too much. I only do that towards management, because if you start talking technobabble, like they're gonna lose you in 1 second in the management meeting. But with engineers, we introduce like, oh, do you know what the cap theorem is? And then we discuss it like, oh, you can have, consistency or da. And then we explain it. And then we put, like, usually you explain the concept and then you apply it to the exact problem that we're discussing. And that's why we make these decisions, or that's why we think this would be better. So everybody can follow in the room. This is also true when we talk with product people, because usually product people are in the room when we discuss the nitty-gritty details, because they're trying to get the information out. Okay, how much time will it take? What are the compromises? What feature will we lose? What do we have to think about? What other areas of the company will be impacted, and so forth. So it's constantly switching technical levels. But when let's say you're discussing a problem with the senior staff engineers, like, you already know that they understand the concepts, hopefully.
You can assume based on their level, hopefully, that they...
Yeah, exactly. And then you can just, discuss business.
It's okay for them to say, oh, I don't know what this is. Again, that's blameless stuff.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, it's very hard for me to know after like 30 years of constantly sucking in information from every possible source, what level. It's genuinely hard to understand, because there are new generations, new education system, everything is new. Internet came along, so it's easier to learn. So I honestly, if I sit down with someone, I cannot know how much they know at this point. If they finish the university in computer science, I will roughly know what they should know, or like if they paid attention, I know they should understand this. But even then, can they apply it in real life? It's not the same thing. I remember in university, I was, I think it was, not calculus, it was numerical systems or whatever. It's how to implement algorithms in a numerical way instead of analytical way. And I asked, and we learned so many techniques, and matrices were flying around left and right. And I asked the teacher, like, okay, but this specific technique, how would I use it in real life? In engineering or in software engineering or whatever? And then she looked at me and said, like, I don't know, I'm a theoretical mathematician, like, for fuck's sake.
It's like,
It's like, thank you very much.
Yeah.
That was very helpful. So just because people were taught something doesn't mean they can apply it in real life. And that's where it's very important to help them apply those techniques during the implementation of the systems or whatever they are doing.
Okay. Let's change track a little bit. So hopefully there's a listener, but if the listener is listening along and they've listened to they've heard how you've described principal engineer, and they're like, oh, this sounds great. This is exactly what I want to do. 2 questions. Start with the first. How would you shape your career from the start to get with an aim of getting to principal engineer? And then 2, what sort of interviews are you expected what's the interview process like for a principal engineer?
Excellent questions. Career path, I don't know, I guess everybody does it differently, but once you reach the senior or staff level, senior staff, that level, that's when the shift is becoming massive, I would say.
That's when you decide what you're doing, right?
That's where you have to step up other areas of your skills to become the principal engineer.
If you want to carry on, like a lot of people, they stop at staff because they're doing programming all day, they're working,
and they're having fun.
They're having fun, they're getting paid enough. So a lot of people stop there. Some people, they go off and they do what I do, which is SRE and more helping other people do stuff. The other path is, another path is principal engineer, there's management as well. How would you go with the principal engineer route?
So that's where you have to, it depends on your personality as well. Me, I'm an introvert. I had to start increasing the communication level.
It sounds like that's very important. Yeah.
The openness, the going out and talk to other teams and understand.
Nuke your ego, it sounds like as well.
You can't be an arrogant engineer. It just won't work, because the cooperation and playing well with others is 10 times more important than being a good coder at that point. So that's why I would say, maybe it's just my individual perception because of my personality. This is a big thing for me to go out and communicate with others, but it's definitely something that you have to do. You can't sit in your room alone and be a principal engineer. It just doesn't work. You have to be able to, as we discussed, you have to be able to translate the business terms into technical terms and vice versa. And I think the second is harder, because you will get the questions, okay, but what will be the return on investment on this? So you have to do financial calculations a lot.
Yeah.
So it has to interest you. One of my favorite topics actually is to see the cost per transaction. I enjoy it, but if you're not interested in this, then it's going to be hard. So I would focus on communication skills. You don't have to be a public speaker necessarily, but at least you have to be able to ask the right questions
in the right way.
Ask it in the right way, so people are cooperating with you. You have to be able to help others. You have to be able to mentor other people. So you have to do it. Like if you hate everyone around you, it's not going to work. Again, you have to be able to you have to want to help other people, including your mentees or your colleagues or anyone in the organization. That's very weirdly formulated requirement list, because you might have expected, like, oh, you should know, I don't know, these tactical design principles, and you should. So I have to add that, like, you have to understand what the different techniques are, how the different type of architectures, the different goals for the different type of architectures, why you're doing it, not just blindly applying. Because let's say you have seen microservices being applied, so you want to use microservices on everything, and it's not going to work. Right? You have to adjust the solution to the problem. So that's involved in that as well.
I was going to say, a little bit of a self-sales here, but if you like helping people, you can also go to DevOps SRE and join me and help the whole organization make cool things.
Yeah, but you do need the same set of skills on that front, although it sounds counterintuitive first, because you would say, like, infra people are not well known for good communication and being helpful, but historically, I would say. But it is exactly the same, because it's a supporting layer in the organization, and you have to serve other people's needs, and you have to communicate and understand what the actual problems are that you're trying to solve. So I agree. It's very common.
as an infra person, I'll tell you a secret. When I'm making a good SRE or DevOps team, I get the bare minimum amount of infra people and the rest are software engineers because they make a lot better tools for other software engineers to make. And they've seen all the problems. Every time I've hired a software engineer, and when I'm building SRE org, usually I try and hire internally from the senior people from other teams. And I say, welcome to the team. First job, whatever was your biggest annoyance while you were working in your team, I want you to fix it and make it available to everyone. It works really well.
Yeah.
Really well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good approach, a very good attitude as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And you were asking about like hiring for.
Yeah, well,
principal
that
engineer.
was okay. So if you want to be a principal engineer, you have to up your communication game. You have to get very comfortable with it. You have to be very open. You have to have no ego. And then something I think you kind of sprinkled on a little bit there, something you mentioned earlier as well. You have to keep learning all the bloody time. Because like if you've spent your whole life up to this date as a Java programmer, suddenly you're gonna have to learn infrastructure, cloud, unit economics, business side. The whole business side of stuff is massive as well. How to translate terms. Like there's so much to learn all of a sudden. I wonder if maybe it's better suited as you're going through your career path to make sure you're trying to get a wide knowledge instead of staying in this super.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think about your history, because you've done a lot of different things, but you've also run SRE org as well, and you come with me to data centers to fix data centers and stuff. And I'm sure all of that helps broaden out knowledge enough so that you can have such a broad picture in your head, but you can also understand to some extent the problems that each individual area might face with certain things because you've had experience within those things.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So maybe a good preparation would be to try to expose yourself to areas that you haven't been before.
Yeah,
consciously and making the decision. Jump teams, jump companies, and we can talk about that as well a little bit. Expose yourself to different experiences because you're going to grow from it. I like to say that I'm a principal engineer because I made all the mistakes there are to be made.
Yeah.
And now I'm here to tell you how not to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
I could talk hours about the mistakes I made. So it's probably a good advice to do that earlier in your career as well. Not just stick with one. And one very, very concrete example, if you have started in a company as a junior and you never left the company.
We were talking about this in the other one, in the other podcast.
Yeah. And if you you became a principal engineer in one company, I don't think you're a principal engineer or it has to be a massive company that does so many different things, different industries.
If you're at Google and you've been all around the company,
yeah, probably.
Then that's fine.
I accept that. I accept it. But I would expect a principal engineer to have seen several companies in different industries, different requirements, like let's say low latency, high throughput systems, or robotics, or accounting, or treasury systems, or ERPs, or all sorts of different things. So you can build a more abstract mental picture about a company, or generally how the world works. If you only seen a narrow slice of the industry, then you will follow that. You will stay in that narrow slice, and you're gonna have a hammer in your hand and everything will look like a nail.
I don't know if this is purely anecdotal or it's actually real. It's not data driven. This is like gut feeling driven. But the senior and principal engineers I've met at companies that have been there the whole time also tend to be the most stuck in their ways and sometimes very egotistical about it. But I think the egotistical about it is more a coping mechanism about imposter syndrome or like of confidence because they haven't seen anything else and it scares them when people suggest different things.
I know what you mean. Like I have seen toxic personalities because they grew into the position because they were early there in the small startup, let's say, and then they inherited the position or like their titles were inflated to the principal level because as they hired more people, because they were early in the company, they had to stay on top, but it doesn't match the actual expectations that I have on a principal engineer. So I have seen that. And usually when I join a company that has people like this, I do intimidate them. Not because of my presence, I'm the nicest guy with everyone.
Yeah.
But because then I start asking the questions and when they realize they can't answer the question, and I'm not asking the questions to intimidate them. It's just like, I really genuinely want to know, like, what is our strategy on this? Or
but going back to politics,
have we considered this other technology that would be 10
This
times
is how
cheaper?
I managed to get them to blow up a little, as if I just keep asking little questions that make perfect sense, and then
Yeah, but my intentions are always just clean, and like I want to make
mm.
the company better. And usually when we have clashes of these different types of principal engineers, then usually it sorts itself out very quickly because others see it as well.
I was going to say as well, like it's something I don't think anyone really talks about, but I've experienced this many times, especially when hiring, and I'm being in a management role and I'm with non-technical managers, and then I'm in an interview with someone and you're talking technical with someone. You can tell almost instantly if they know what they're talking about or not. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a weird sixth sense. And then the non-technical manager I'm with are like, "Oh, that guy was really good," and I'd be like, "No, he had no clue what I was talking about," or the other way around, like, "Oh, he didn't seem that good," and I was like, "This guy knows what he's talking about." That probably translates as well. Like if you meet someone who's only had that one pillar of one company and they don't have much experience, you can tell pretty quickly the limits of their perceptions, right? So it comes across very quickly, and it can probably see the other way around. They can see this guy, he knows loads, and then they get intimidated, going back to your intimidation, even unintentionally.
Yes, yeah.
So but to swing it back round, you want to be that person who intimidates, not the one who gets intimidated. So go to different companies and get more experience.
That's not how I would put it, but that's the outcome. Yeah. And because of this, the nature of this role, it's very hard to hire for it, I think. Very hard to test a person just in an interview process, like are they capable or not, because it involves so many soft skills that at least I'm not very expert in testing. I'm not a psychologist.
I would almost like interview them like a manager in some ways.
Yeah, it is like that. It typically involves the C-level, like the CTO interviews principle for sure. It has technical aspects, very deep technical. There's coding, there's architecture. There's also more theoretical. So if I interview someone for a peer role, I expect way more from them than even from a staff.
What you're expecting is a peer, and then the way I hire peers is, can I learn from this person?
Yeah, exactly. Because we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And if you can find someone who's good at what you're not that good at, that's amazing. Then you can work very well together. Usually, at least in my experiences, again, the interview process takes like sometimes 8-9 interviews before you actually land a job like this, as in with the same company. So because you have to do let's say a home assignment, some sort of aptitude test, or skills, or then architecture. Then you talk to a manager, like a team manager, then a product person, then you talk to the CTO, very often the CEO as well. So it can draw out, but it's fine. Usually you have to pick the right people for this position.
It's a very influential, right? So you have to.
Yeah, exactly. It has a huge impact on the company, but that's the beauty of it as well. Like you're part of the strategic decisions. You can shape the company's success much more than when you're a junior engineer, obviously. So that's the beauty as well. We don't have time to go into practical tips on how to interview a principal engineer, and God knows I don't know how to do it like perfectly. But usually, and I know it might be cheesy, but I don't know how to define really a principal engineer, but I know when I see one.
This is what I was going back to the instinct in a way.
You have to quantify it in an interview process somehow. So, of course, you can ask the deep technical questions, and that will give you a good picture. But on the soft side, it's harder because everybody can be nice for 1 hour, but can you do it for 3 months, 6 months, or 10 years?
Yeah, that's the hardest thing. I find that I'm quite good at smelling out the fakers, but I'm not so good at you're probably better at the like deep technical interviews. I'm not very good at that. If say you sign up as a CTO or something, you have some pretty strict, and I'm not sure people realize this, but you have some pretty strict contract requirements. Like it's usually like 6 months trial, and they can fire you straight away, and like 6 months notice. So it's probably the same, like the level of responsibility and accountability and like impact on the company, as that goes up, the contract requirements get harder and harder. So for a principal engineer, I guess you should have a long trial period, and you have to be very strict with the trial period as well.
Yeah, we have to, we can't just roll on, we have to wait, we have to make an evaluation at the end of the time for any key position. And the way I get this intuition of during the interview process usually is how they work on the problem with me. We create an architecture together, we talk about it, and then I just throw in the few questions like, hey, but how would this compare to let's say, I don't know, like an event-driven architecture, or like what would be the difference if you pick this database versus that database, and then I want to hear the proper technical terms, like, that doesn't provide ACID guarantees, or it doesn't have the right semantics on the queue. These are the questions I want to, or when it's like, could you do it low latency, high throughput, and consistent and atomic? Nah, you can't. You can pick whatever to, right? So that's what I want to hear, that they have a higher level understanding of the problem. It's not just repeating patterns that they have seen before.
So like a good enough knowledge to be able to reason about different problems with the technologies that are at hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Let's summarize.
Principal engineer is not an architect. It's a support role at the very highest level of engineering. That is supposed to have decision-making and strategy and communication with all different parts of the company, and where needed, go in and help troubleshoot like problems that the company is facing, but have a very high view and be able to see where those problems are occurring, because a lot of the times it'd be like, blind, can't see the forest for the trees is the saying. What did I miss? There's lots.
Architecting is part of the job, for sure.
But it's not an ivory tower kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. And just to reiterate, like, what do you have to do as a principal engineer? You have to know the difficult stuff. Very simply put, you have to do the hard things in the company. Right? You have to go into the hardest problems, solve the hardest problems that don't seem to have a solution. You have to do a lot of knowledge sharing and explaining and working with the teams. You also have to do mentoring, typically, one-on-one mentoring, and you have to be a role model really for the whole organization, because if you exhibit a behavior, then everyone in the organization will start exhibiting that. If you're arrogant, people will start doing kind of like arrogant stuff.
A culture setter as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And then also have an understanding of the business side of things and how to translate that into technical requirements.
Yes. Yeah, you have to be an interpreter as well. Exactly, from technobabble to business terms and back.
And if you want to be one, make sure you get a lot of experience in different areas.
Yeah, we haven't touched on like time, but it was implied, I would say, like how much do you have to work before you can reach this level. Again, this is going to be my personal opinion. There are no set rules, but if you're like reaching 15 years of experience, I think that's when you could be considered. And why am I saying this? Like, this sounds arbitrary, right? But if you start working in any industry, first of all, you need to accumulate a lot of experience generally. But at this role, like, you have to be able to see through big projects. Which big projects can mean 6 months to 2 years, sometimes 5 years. Just a deprecation project of an old system could take 5 years easily. And then to be able to extract knowledge from these projects, you have to repeat, like you have to have multiple projects. If you've seen something once, you have seen it. You have an impression, but to build an intuition or build real knowledge, you have to have multiple of these projects. So let's say you have 3, 4, at least I would say at 3, you should see the repeating patterns. And at the 4th one, you should be able to lead, right? And then once you have led a big project or a couple, that's when you should be considered for a principal role. This is my opinion. And this just simply takes time. You can't rush it.
Its experience is the key thing, right?
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
Because you can learn all the theory if you can't apply it in reality, and you can't make it reality through communicating with teams and making sure that and you follow up. You have to be exposed to different like product concepts and project management concepts and understand how life works in these companies. And you have to see it a couple of times before you can confidently apply these techniques. And that's why I would say like 15 years if you got lucky.
If you stick with engineering, don't get sidetracked by management like I did.
There are companies out there, if you're concerned that you want to grow, but you're being forced into a management role, just change a company.
But saying that, there are very valuable parts to having done management.
Yes, I have done management as well. So,
Yeah.
disclaimer. So maybe some of the experiences like people management and how to talk to people and especially mentoring,
Yep.
having one-on-ones, that's always useful experience.
Conflict resolution and like dealing with tricky situations and like just how to motivate a team, how to follow up, and it involves the product and planning of projects and stuff. Maybe take it once in the spirit of getting as much experience in different areas as possible. Do a couple of years as a manager and do a really good job, and then switch to something else.
It won't hurt, that's for sure.
Cool. Thank you for joining this episode of the Tech League podcast.
Thank you.
You've been Krisztian. I've been Toby. And we're going to peace out.
Puss. It's a habit.
Thank you for listening to the Tech League podcast.